We accepted this responsibility and sought to recognize not only that ex-offenders are part of the family, humankind, but also that they are part of their communities and often have families that love them and want them to succeed. Throughout the country, we saw how drug treatment programs, drug courts, veterans courts, and similar innovations can work to deal with problems like addiction that are associated with criminal behavior and to decrease the probability of recidivism. Throughout the country, we saw savvy prosecutors supporting reentry programs in the belief that they hold out a greater promise of reducing crime and making their communities safer than by repeatedly sending individuals to jail and prison. We saw judges adopting creative alternatives to jail and prison. But we also saw how one obstacle threatens to stifle innovation and frustrate efforts to assure that former offenders have a real chance to become successful members of their community. That obstacle is why we're here today. That obstacle is the collateral consequences that attach to many convictions. Maurice Alexander was a 61-year-old resident of the District of Columbia. He was caught up in a police roundup of young males and forced to lie face down on the sidewalk. As Mr. Alexander described it, and these are his words, "I became perturbed and I shook my finger at the police and said something to the effect of, 'Shame on you.' A jury found Alexander guilty of attempted threat to do bodily harm, a misdemeanor under the laws of the District of Columbia. He served 10 days in jail, and the conviction is on his record permanently." So what does that mean? 6 years later, it would cost him a chance at affordable housing and leave him homeless for nearly 7 months. The collateral consequences laws mean he can be evicted from low-income housing and barred from a myriad of jobs ranging from barber to security officer. Let us be clear about what collateral consequences are. When an individual is convicted, a judge, or in some states, a jury, determines whether to impose a sentence of incarceration. At sentencing, a determination also is made whether to impose a fine or a restitution obligation upon a defendant. These are the direct consequences of a conviction, and they have limits. Once an individual has served whatever jail or prison sentence is imposed, completed any probationary, parole, or supervised release term, and paid any monetary obligations, the punishment period ends. This is not so with collateral consequences. These are disqualifications or disadvantages imposed by statute or regulation that prevent former offenders from obtaining public benefits, holding certain jobs, pursuing certain professions, obtaining educational benefits, or living in public housing. The shocking thing is that in many places, these consequences are never ending. A person who is convicted and placed on probation for 30 days may be burdened by collateral consequences for 30 years or even for life. Most people in America believe in the expression, paying your dues. Well, Maurice Alexander and millions of others in America have been paying their dues and a whole lot more than their dues. The general belief is that when sentences are served, people have, in fact, paid their dues. But because of collateral consequences, a conviction continues to exact dues every single day. In my home state of South Carolina, almost 700 collateral consequences are on the books. Unfortunately, that number is lower than in many states. They range from being ineligible to vote, hold a commercial driver's license, or obtain food stamps, to being barred from obtaining a barber's license. Certainly there are good grounds why a criminal conviction should be a factor in deciding whether or not a former offender should be able to hold certain jobs. No one would require a daycare center to hire an individual convicted of child molestation. But most people would expect that if we offer educational opportunities to someone in jail or prison so that he or she would have the qualifications to perform a job upon release, we would not by statute or regulation disqualify that person from the very job he or she was trained to do while incarcerated. The truth is that in most jurisdictions, collateral consequences may be imposed automatically upon conviction. Often there is no mechanism by which to obtain relief from them. The result is that these collateral consequences become a life sentence harsher than whatever sentence a court actually imposed upon the conviction. Many states bar ex-offenders from public employment, and since many private firms decide not to hire ex-offenders, they are left with few, if any, options. No wonder that approximately 60% of formerly incarcerated individuals remain unemployed 1 year after release. Federal law includes a mandatory ban on access to public housing for people with certain types of convictions and grants discretion to local housing authorities to deny housing based on criminal activity. Entire households may be evicted. Entire households may be evicted based on the arrest or pending criminal charge of one member. This one-strike provision has a profound impact on family structure. Many families residing in public housing have to sign agreements that ex-offender family members cannot live with or even visit them at their public housing unit. It is no wonder, then, that nearly 1/3 of individuals released from incarceration expect to go to and end up in homeless shelters. Did Maurice Alexander's crime deserve a sentence of homelessness? In a majority of states, persons with felony drug convictions face a lifetime ban on receiving public assistance. In 2013, approximately 180,000 women were subject to the ban on such assistance in the 12 states with the most punitive policies. A study of persons recently released from incarceration in Texas, California, and Connecticut likened their level of food insecurity to that in developing countries. This barrier to accessing critical public assistance not only contributes to hunger and malnutrition, but also restricts access to mental health and substance abuse treatment programs. It just doesn't make any sense. For those offenders fortunate enough to seek higher education, the barriers do not end. Many former offenders are ineligible for student loans. The national inventory brings transparency to what was a complex and largely hidden part of criminal justice. Now, for the first time, there's reason to believe that conscientious judges and lawyers will pay attention to the collateral consequences as they dispose of criminal cases. Before defendants plead guilty to an offense, they can see the full effect of what that plea may cost them. While many people in trouble with the law are most interested in the immediate concern of staying out of jail or prison, a concern we all can appreciate, the long-lasting consequences now can also be evaluated by lawyers and judges in determining punishment, and the defendant will at least know up front what is at stake. There's reason to hope that conscientious legislators and agency officials will examine the collateral consequences and eliminate or modify those that unnecessarily stand in the way of an individual being able to reclaim his or her place as a lawful, contributing member of a community. This is important to the ABA because it is a matter of justice. It is important to America because it is a matter of fairness. And it is important to every person in this room and in the United States because it is a matter of morality. As the ABA Kennedy Commission so succinctly stated, and I quote, "Once society has exacted its price from an individual, there is a strong case to be made that society should not only permit, but should encourage that person to make a positive contribution to society." I look forward to joining you in this important summit. I thank you for your hard work and attention, and I hope we can continue to pursue the causes of justice and fairness.